Hi there, everyone. I am Michelle Teague from A Teague of Your Own, and with me is my good friend Betty. Say hi to everybody, Betty.
Hi, my name is Betty Novak, and I'm with LifePath Associates, LLC. And we are here to bring you another topic on Coffee with Two Coaches.
Mhm.
Interesting enough, Michelle and I met over a year ago, and we decided that we want to do a couple of short videos of topics that people would find useful in their workplace and sometimes in their personal life. And they aren't very long. And we put them on the LinkedIn and the Facebook page called Top Coffee with Two Coaches. And it's also on YouTube, Coffee with Two Coaches. So there are many places for you to be able to enjoy topics of interest for yourself. And we welcome you today.
Yeah, and we've been talking about various topics that are very relevant to people in the workplace. These are relevant to business owners, to managers, to leaders, to HR folks. Lots of good topics out there. So if this is the first time that you've seen this, welcome. If you've been watching all along, we're glad that you're here too. This particular topic today, we are going to talk a little bit about the future of human resources and talk a little bit about how it's changed because it has gone through changes
Mhm.
over the past several decades. And so we're going to look a little bit more at where it's been, where it's going, what some of the challenges are for human resources. And some of you may be asking yourself, well, why is it changing and what's going on there? Uh, One of the primary reasons why many businesses are changing their human resource practices into more of a focus on people and culture is because there's been this really wide disconnect between business strategy and long-term goals along with how human resources works. Human resources, it's a necessary part of our business. Everybody has to have those functions in their business. It hasn't always been viewed as being deeply integrated with the strategic functions of business operations, though. And the interesting truth to considering about human resources is it's there to support the strategy. Organizational output of human resource teams is tremendous when you look at recruiting, onboarding and training, when you look at talent and skill development, when you look at performance management, when you look at health and well-being, when you look at succession planning. Typically, human resources is administrative and creating policy, enforcing compliance. So when it comes to choosing a function on people as opposed to the process, we're actually dealing with people. That's what human resources is doing. And what we're finding is it's starting to change how it functions within the business. And that's why you're seeing some title changes for human resources. So, Betty, tell us a little bit about the changes that have happened.
Okay. First, I want to say something. If you're a small business person, an entrepreneur, you still need HR,
Yeah.
and whatever they're calling it, right? And you need it for all the things that Michelle just said. And sometimes you don't have enough money to hire an HR person, and you yourself, as an owner and manager, don't have time to deal with the HR, even though you are the one that is giving information to an HR person to help manage it. So there are a lot of places that are consultants or give you services that you can buy. So it's really important for you to understand HR. And so we hope that you will get a start with this here. So as Michelle said, human resources has experienced significant change in recent years and pretty much since the 1970s, actually. And the transformation is far from over because things are really changing with DEI and other types of policy changes. And companies continue to adapt in new ways of working and evolving labor market and the human resources is expected to shift to be able to support that. So what's next for human resources, and what change awaits human resource leaders, and what roles will they play in the future? Well, you know what? Like you go through rebranding your business, or you go through rebranding yourself and your organization so that you are seen as a valuable commodity. So does human resources. They are trying to rebrand themselves. They went from personnel to human resources, and now they're rebranding themselves in other ways. So the critical importance of people and organizations has been made clear, but human resources carries a negative connotation. And it started that way probably around 2000. People were like, what do you do, type of thing, and how do you contribute to the bottom line? And so the combined words human resources implies that humans are resources. They're they are meant to be used.
Mhm.
And many of the VPs are coming up and saying, really, they're people operations. They are here to really help run the business, to help make it successful. And so they really aren't a number or name on a page in a data. So, so the combination, so Yang's view is, as she said, people operations. And she's out of Boulder, Colorado, her company is, and she feels like it should encompass and bring to the forefront the idea that people are the center of the business success, which I just said. She's not alone in her view, because Donald Thompson, CEO of Diversity Management, also believes HR needs to rebrand itself. So he says the move from HR to talent and people management is the logical step when considering inclusive leadership and the way people are at the heart of the culture-centric organizations. In other words, human resources, whatever you call them, talent management, people operations, and so forth, is that they still are the leaders that help people become the heart of the organization and the culture that it wants to have and wants people to be in. And culture today is really important to employees and people seeking seeking companies and places where they want to work. So, while names may be based on preferences, the idea is the same. So the nature and function has changed. Human resources no longer is like personnel, where they do, you know, where they do payroll and they do uh, recruiting and interviewing only. And they even do orientation. They really get into working with people when they're in the organization and help them figure out where they want to be, what they're going to be doing, and what's their future. So they really are taking a more hands-on approach. And they also work with the organizations or departments to be better at working with their people.
Yeah, I
That's
can
there.
recall several years ago, Betty, when I was working for a huge corporation in senior living. Their head of
Um,
human resources, his title was the chief people officer. And that's what you're seeing happening, is you're seeing this shift from, like you said, human resources, where people are seen as resources that can be used up, or may, assets that aren't necessarily uh, there for the long term. Um, when you have this negative connotation to moving on to how is it that people are adding value, and how the people who are working with the organization, and the teams that are being led, they are adding value to the organization itself. And that's what human resources is trying to shift to. They're trying to rebrand themselves to show how people truly are adding value to the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was a regional manager, region training manager, and a manager of technical education, like for the hair cuttery, and a regional training manager for a certain restaurant and Legs and Laren, it was very interesting because each job I became, it's I still had the title regional training manager, which was really the HR person in the regional office pretty much. And it got more, I had to do more and more and more. And the more I was there, I was sitting at the table with the operations and sales staff. And at first it sort of scared me, because I said, I'm training. But I learned to look at them and ask them, what did they really need? And then if they didn't know what they need, or they were, you know, the things that they were going to do weren't going to help their people be productive, was going to create conflict, then we would have a conversation about that, and I would have their managers come in and, get trained again. So it started changing in the 1980s, but it really changed in the 1990s,
Yeah.
especially when President Clinton, and I was in the government by then, and President Clinton had re-engineering of the federal government. And so HR had to step up to the plate and be internal consultants, and they were not comfortable with that because they were used to be compliant oriented.
Yes.
But but we pushed them to do that. So it
Well,
changed. So
and part of it is when it comes to this rebranding and when it comes to the shift in what human resources is actually responsible for and what they're actually doing, what we're seeing this shift from policy enforcement and like you said, focusing on policies and procedures to more of an employee experience. And when the department emerged, centuries ago, human resources and personnel and like you said, all the hiring uh, part, that's been around for centuries. When it first emerged, that role was really clear. It was to manage human capital in a manner that optimized the output for the company. You were allocating human resources to tasks to achieve a predetermined outcome. Nowadays, however, the human resource department's role is a whole lot broader. They've become more focused on delivering a positive employee experience that crosses into personal well-being, which is one of the things that we've talked about in the past when it comes to employee assistance programs, how they've shifted from drug and alcohol awareness to being there for the employees' well-being and making sure that the employees are being taken care of and that they have programs in place to help with that. Human resources role is no longer about just enforcing roles and policies. Well, John and Kirk, who's a project director at the London-based Screen Cloud, has said human resources is about improving the employee's perception and experience at the company. And the reality is the best human resources teams are now looking at employees as customers, and they're striving for their loyalty and their satisfaction. And a lot of that goes to making sure that they can keep those good employees. And we've talked about retention issues in the past. And so the lens of how we see human resources has shifted from this results driven perspective to a people's first perspective.
that's true. Can you pause for a minute? Pause. So you were saying that HR changed so much that they really were having to support and really help employees have the rights that they had, but also, they have labor management and they
Mhm.
have employee management, so labor employee relations. So those two things are under HR, and those became really important because when you had, especially in the government, which was new to them, when you had union contracts and stuff, that you really had to know that you couldn't be one or the other. You had to be able to work with both. Now, when the
Yes.
contracts happened, you had to bring in a mediator
Mhm.
because the head of the HR or labor relations really had to be with managers, and the communion was with the employees.
Mm.
And I had to facilitate the beginning of the meeting. That was fun. And so you could see that lines were drawn and you had to facilitate the conversation. But otherwise, both of them were really into helping the employee,
Mm.
not be conflictive
Yeah.
and be able to be get performance driven. So,
Right. Well, what other
so
changes? So, what other changes are you seeing when it comes to HR and when it comes to um, how they're viewed by leadership?
well, again, we've been really saying this over and over, that they're supporting employees in the business,
Mm.
which, because they were mainly administrative, that was new to them. But now they really are in charge, and they really mm, have strength at the table when
Yeah.
strategic planning is occurring, business changes, and even they have to talk about how it's going to affect managers and employees and the
Mhm.
workplace and so forth. So that's the most significant change in the evolution of human resource, is the fact, like I just said, they are a leader
Mhm.
at the table of other leaders, and they have to think of themselves as driving for results by empowering the people in the company. And they have to be very clear what those people need to do. And they are the ones that communicate it. Um, so as we talked about, as we said before, and I hate to repeat it, but before, HR leaders spent their time at payroll, attendance, onboarding, and so forth, which are mainly process as
Mhm.
opposed to people oriented. And what they did finally is they created specialists to do each of those things. And the AKA, the payroll manager emerged to be able to keep the payroll going. And the compensation manager came
Mhm.
out, and we had the employee relations manager and so forth, all the pieces, so that, and then they created a table where they had to come together to be able to figure out how HR each year was going to support the rest of the organization.
Mhm.
So today, HR leaders play a really central role in supporting employees in their day-to-day work, helping them to develop skills that they don't have or that
Yeah.
they need to grow. And so while all of it continues to serve the same goal, maximize output and deliver on the larger business goals, the part of HR plays a really big role. They have shifted to benefit the employee, and AKA, their biggest thing is benefits,
Yeah.
employee benefits. They're always having to work with employee benefits because laws change, AKA policies change, and they have to be able to tell the managers, or really consult to the managers, of how this affects them and their employees. And I tell you, more people go to EEO because they don't get it,
Yeah.
because there's such conflicts between the employee and the manager. So they are helping individuals improve their competencies and advance in their career, which is another place,
Mhm.
advancement. And is there a place to advance? I mean, you and I've talked about something that I did, and I learned from Beverly Kay that up is not the
Mhm.
way to go always. And that I figured out that there are 5 ways. So, if one person said, well, I'm going to have to go down, and there's no promotion, but I need more money. And we talked about how they can negotiate more money
Mhm.
and get more work so that the money, they could get the money. So those are things that you help with. But looking ahead, Kirk believes HR teams will grow even more focused on improving the experience of employees by addressing 3 key aspects of modern human resources. What do my people need to complete their work and be inclusive?
Mhm.
How do they need to have the resources delivered? And when do they need to have these resources and services provided? And I think it's very interesting. There's a couple of ads on the TV where the one ad where the one guy, you may not have seen it, but the one guy looks at his iPhone
Mhm.
and he's lost a day of compensation and he doesn't know where it went. And so another guy comes and says, well, this is a personnel payroll um, program that you can, you know, you can see what your compensation is
Mhm.
going to be. And so therefore, then you don't have any mistakes. So sometimes they're having the employees themselves taking over that part. And then the payroll manager, you know, oversees it. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is, and you're seeing technology aid, uh, various organizations and departments when it comes to payroll, when it comes to personnel records, when it comes to vacation requests and time off requests, where people are able to go into an app that, like you said, they have on their phone and they can submit all the any corrections in there, they can submit all their time off requests in there, and it makes the workflow a whole lot easier. And that way you don't lose the piece of paper. You don't lose that signature of a supervisor saying that you've been approved for something. And that's the direction that all of this is going. Is it's going online. It's going towards using technology to really help to manage all of this.
Well,
So
didn't we talk about AI
we
in
did.
HR before?
Yep.
I mean, that's not in this video, but we do have one on how AI is going to affect and is maybe affecting human resource departments and
Yeah.
human resource managers and CHROs, CHIROs, Chief Human Resource Officers. So that's a whole new thing for me. We didn't have CHIROs when I was working before I retired. But yeah, and they're changing it even more with other names. So uh, it's just changing.
It is.
And,
It is.
and people who are in human resources um, need to are always going to get classes. But now I remember when I was let's say working in the private sector, um, Society for Human Resource Management had a certificate. And then
Mhm.
in the late 90s and 2000, that was something that you, as a human resource professional, you ended up being using that to, I don't know how you can say it. You ended up using that certificate as a leverage for you
Yes.
um, to be hired, just like
Mhm.
IC International Coaching Federation. You use the professional coaching certification and the master's coaching certification to be able to compete against other coaches that may not have it. So certificate became important. And actually, if you want to become a human resource certified person, go to SHRM and they have 2 levels of
Yes.
certification.
Mhm.
So, you know, it's growing and growing. I'm not crazy about, you having to have certification only. Experience really is more important, but that's how people divide the wheat from the chaff,
Yes.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. For years, they've had Sherm has had, like you said, they've got the PHR. They've got several different certifications that they're offering, and uh, there are organizations that will hire and they will promote based on those particular certifications. So,
Yep.
human
And there's a
resource.
new one coming. Um, I used to belong to the American Training and Development Association, but
Mhm.
now it's called Association of Talent and Development,
Yep,
ATD.
ATD. Yep.
And they now have a couple certificates for trainers who are training managers,
Yep.
who are really high quality specialized trainers who've been, again, the certification will leverage who you
Mhm.
are and where you would be hired in the training, talent management, actually, which would be training part of HR.
Mhm. Yep. So we've been talking today about a lot of the changes that human resources are going through. We've been talking about how it's evolved over the years, what the future is for it. The reality is, human resources, it really helps companies to widely invest in the people and in the people department. Human resource departments, or whatever they're going to get rebranded in, they are there to help support the people of the organization. They are there to help make sure that they are growing and they are thriving and they have the resources they need to be successful there in the organization, so that the organization itself can continue to grow. We've talked a little bit in previous videos about how AI can help support some of that, and I suppose one of the things that we can look at in the future is, can artificial intelligence support and push the current idea of doing more with less? And you can see
Yeah.
where some companies are going in that direction, where they're wanting to use AI to take over some of the busy work that people are doing, and we've talked a little bit about that in the past. Oh, but also, will artificial intelligence help promote time for human resource people to consult and get out in the field more to create human resources as that true people culture? As AI can take over some of the personnel part and some of the payroll part, will that free up time for people to go out and interact more with people and make sure that they have the resources that they need?
Well,
And
mhm.
that that
Go ahead.
that's gonna happen.
Yep, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And there's another thing that's happening, which sort of started in, when it's in private sector, you sort of ask, can I share something, even though you were consulting? Because
Mhm.
if you, one day I told this franchisee, you need to do it, and boy, did I get in trouble. So I learned how to, well, I've observed this and so forth. So
Mhm.
I started coaching when I didn't even know I was coaching.
Yes.
And so what I heard the other day, on something, on a webinar I was on, that they showed figures that coaching is becoming
Yeah.
um, um, the second role and business, in the world. And that, and I know some of this because, I used to be an external executive coach
Mhm.
in the agencies, and now we have to compete against the internal executive coaches who have taken the same training and gotten certification. I would imagine that's the same thing with, consultants in HR versus HR people who consult and
Yes.
coach inside the organization. So, it's going to be interesting to see how AI, external, internal roles, come together, and that it doesn't freak out the employees, too much, because we
Exactly.
still are having a hard time getting people to come and work
Yes.
where an
Yes.
AI can't do the work.
No.
So it's
No.
it's we have a real challenge
Yes, we do.
on our hands.
All right. Well, we hope you found this useful, talking about what direction human
Yep.
resources is going to go in the future. And I'm sure we are going to revisit some of what we've talked about today, especially AI, because that seems to really be changing a lot of how businesses work and how they operate. And so, leveraging that can be really helpful, especially for small businesses who don't have the ability, or don't have the money to pay extra people to do a lot of the work. And
I
so,
think that there's another thing we can look at, which is, how is human resources dealing with robotics?
yeah.
I mean, that's coming up more and more, even though Amazon and other places that have warehouses,
Mhm.
and distribution centers, they are using, uh, interesting robotics. So, but, and obviously the car industry has been using them for auto industry has been using them for a while, and other ones. But I think they're coming into like the restaurants.
Yeah, well, when you
Stuff
look at
like that.
fast food restaurants,
Mm.
anytime you walk into McDonald's at this point and Taco Bell, they've got the kiosks there that
Yeah,
you
yes.
type in your order because they don't want to have to pay to have somebody behind a cashier,
Yeah.
and that's coming. Yeah.
And I've heard some of the fast food restaurants, one, they have a robot come out and take your order and deliver your food. I've seen that. And the other thing that they do, they have some robots that are programmed to prep food
Oh yeah.
in the
Yeah.
back. That's just me. That I being the restaurant industry, that's a little scary for me. But oh well, we'll have to deal with it. Hopefully they are looking at it and making sure that it's done correctly
Yeah.
and nobody gets hurt or anything. So,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
there are, as you said, AI, I'm saying robotics,
Hmm.
down the way, how's it going to affect business, how it's going to affect human resource, which is a big part of the business. Um, it'll be very interesting.
Yes, it will. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Bye, everyone.